Hey everyone, and welcome back to UI Spy, the series where I analyze the UI of video games. Ever since it started back in 2015, Splatoon has quickly become one of Nintendo's only multiplayer series, alongside Smash Bros. And Mario Kart. It's arguably the most successful new IP we've gotten from them in the past decade, spawning 2 sequels, merch across the board, and dozens of free content updates. Its early 2000s street punk aesthetic has made for an appealing atmosphere that's unlike anything else we've seen from Nintendo. As you'll see in this video, the world building and UI design of Splatoon go hand in hand with each other throughout the series. With the recent release of Splatoon 3 Side Order DLC and online support for the Wii U and 3DS ending in April, I figured this would be the perfect time to take a look back at how the UI of Splatoon has changed over the years. I'll mainly be focusing on the UI found within battles, as that is the most frequently interacted with during gameplay. So without further ado, let's begin. After booting up Splatoon 1 on the Wii U recently, I was surprised with how familiar it felt. Even 9 years later, most of the DNA of the menu design can still be found within its sequels. This is especially true for the shop menus, which have remained mostly the same between each entry. You can tell this UI was designed in the Wii U era of Nintendo, as it uses shaded Fruitiger arrow controller buttons and animated textures for the backgrounds of certain graphics. But what makes Splatoon 1 stand out the most from its feature entries, however, is its use of the gamepad. Having a second screen at all times allowed for menus and other interfaces to be separated from the main screen, so when viewing the current stages or control settings, all you see are those menus on the gamepad, no blurred backgrounds or other menus to distract you. As the stylus was used for interacting with the gamepad UI, Splatoon 1 allowed you to have an uninterrupted gameplay experience. This was especially helpful in online matches when you're constantly on the move and don't have much time to look at maps and such. The gamepad also gave us cool retro minigames like Squid Jump and Squid Beats, which you could have played while waiting in the lobby. I really wish they brought these games back. Hopefully they'll be in a future update. It makes me appreciate the Wii U more for taking advantage of having dual screen gameplay. It would be cool if Splatoon 4 could allow you to recreate this, with an option to have your phone be a second screen, for example. Most of the core gameplay UI still feels familiar even as Sony's played way more of the Switch entries. Nintendo did a lot right in their first game in creating a user-friendly design, placing most of the elements on top of the screen and only using the bottom for callouts and when players are splatted. It does have a couple of weird quirks though. When you die in a match, you can't spam the "come on" later change to "ouch" callout. It makes it difficult to tell your teammates how and why you died. Also, as you're fighting enemy players, their ink color takes up way too much of the screen, making it difficult to see your surroundings. I'm glad this was toned down in later entries, as this really turned me off from playing Splatoon 1 all the way back in 2015. It's crazy to think that Nintendo nailed the battle UI so well in this game that it would only get iterated upon and reused in future games. Despite barely touching the original Splatoon compared to the 1,000+ hours I spent in the later games, its UI helped me make it easy to go back to in 2024. From the highlighter color choices such as the lime greens, bright oranges, and neon pinks, to the Inkopolis language being found within the shop menus, and even some of the fun shapes found within some of the buttons, especially on the gamepad. You can tell Nintendo wanted to make Splatoon a special new IP, especially during a time when the Wii U was really struggling to succeed. Thankfully, despite the Wii U's failure, Splatoon still thrives on almost a decade later, and we have the original game to thank for that. Just 2 years after the original game, Nintendo brought us Splatoon 2 during the launch year of the Switch in 2017. Nintendo took advantage of the upgraded hardware and translated the game perfectly to a single-screen device. Despite the quality of life improvements in 3, 2 is still my personal favorite in the series. It has many maps that haven't returned as of this video, including the iconic Mori Towers and Port Mackerel. Like many Switch owners, Splatoon 2 helped me appreciate the appeal of the series, making me enjoy the fun gameplay and world more than before. Splatoon 2 marks Nintendo starting to place a greater focus on competitive play in the series, which can be found within the UI changes, the biggest one being all player weapons are now visible in their respective icons during battle, instead of just having 8 random inkling icons on screen. This was a huge change, benefiting both casual and competitive players. Instead of memorizing which weapons their teammates and enemies use, players can now plan around team compositions, adding a new layer of strategy to gameplay. Now that the gamepad has gone and we only have one screen to use, you bring up the map by pressing the X button, blurring the rest of the screen. Although you can't see your equipped abilities anymore, you can now see those every other player has, even on the opposing team. So now you can immediately tell if a team is cheesing with an all-main power-up strat. The buttons for super jumping to any of your teammates or the spawn point are spread out to the cardinal directions of the screen, instead of all being on the right side in Splatoon 1. Since the map is on the same screen as the gameplay now, these buttons are significantly smaller. The rest of the layout for UI elements got an overhaul as well. The timer and amount of points inked drastically reduced in size. The timer moved to the top center of the screen, placing the same hierarchy as the team icons. Similar to Smash Melee, this change makes it quicker to glance at the amount of time left in the match, instead of having to move your eyes away from the center of the screen. The timer icon also got changed to a cool old Nickelodeon logo shape instead of a boring oval, which adds a bit of personality to the UI. The amount of points inked got simplified from a black square to white text to just simply white text and simple drop shadow, making more of the stage visible to players. The font used for the two elements were also changed from using chunky bold characters to lighter ones. The danger icon for a team with a disadvantage was changed to a black text on a lime green background, instead of the red text on the yellow background. This greater color contrast between these elements and the font changes improves the overall readability of the UI. For the callouts, command was changed to this way, which is way clearer for providing teammates directions for where to go. It also changes to ouch whenever you get splatted, warning teammates about nearby enemies. Whenever a special is fully charged, the meter changes color to a light pink and blue gradient, reminding players they can use their special. The lens flare, which happens as soon as the meter fully fills, is brighter as well. The player icons also use this gradient, so players can strategize around other players using their specials, both on their team and on the enemies. This was another huge addition that changed the gameplay flow entirely. Whenever a match ends, you can now finally change your weapons and continue playing in the same lobby, instead of having to back out and join again. Most of the shop and menu UIs are mostly the same as Splatoon 1, but are refined and easier to see. With the map on the gamepad being gone, you now access the map, settings, current stages, and more by pressing L. This menu got an overhaul as well, where you switch tabs by pressing the L and R buttons, instead of having to tap a specific icon on the gamepad. Splatoon 2's major overhaul of the UI design in the menus and battles provided a blueprint which would be improved upon and nearly perfected for Splatoon 3. Before talking about Splatoon 3, I wanted to let my friend Melovania discuss the UI of Octo Expansion and Side Order, as those DLCs are some of the highlights of modern Splatoon.
Derailing to steer the UI hype train towards the aesthetic, have you ever really hung out in the Octo Expansion Deep Sea Metro car? Splatoon's player-facing UI elements are sneaky important to selling you on its vibes-rich world, and Agent 8 stuff spears zero expense on this. In this menu, do you see what 8 is doing with her thumb? There is no reason for the remote control to mirror your joystick, but boom, immersion points. And how obsessed with and deprived of Inkling culture is she to be trembling while holding mem cakes? Needlessly charming menu elements are just the cherry on top. Marina's chat room is a masterclass in practical yet immersive visuals. It's an old web chat room that you have to scroll through, which is both simple to read and functionally rich. Its job is to relay story and characterize off the hook, and then by using pretty green butterfly wallpaper and like silly music notes and hearts in the title, you can feel what kind of vibe Marina has going on. Side Order appears to continue balancing function and immersion with its cyber vibes. I particularly like how damage points pop up every time you shoot a fish, which provides encouragement and makes the world feel even more like it's all digitized. Some eagle-eyed fans even noticed that the floor names got changed to file names between trailers, which is just classic Splatoon worlding at this point. Leaving your viewers with a reminder, Octo Expansion is not Vaporwave. It's a more broad retro thing, including Vaporwave. I gratefully return control to you, Aqua.
Although its UI is very similar to the previous game, Splatoon 3's quality of life improvements make its UI easily the best in the series to date. For starters, at the beginning of each game, players can now choose where they will land in the team's spawning area. Now you and your teammates can immediately coordinate with each other before the timer starts, planning how you will eventually want to reach the opposing team. It's immediately clear how Nintendo wanted Splatoon 3 to be even more competitively focused than 2, especially with the rising prominence of official tournament support for the game. The special meter is now universally orange instead of matching your team's ink color like in the previous two games. It's also segmented like the volume meter in Apple products, indicating the exact amount of points players have built up towards a special. In shooters where constant movement and split-second decision-making are essential, this subtle change encourages players to be more strategic when playing to use their specials. The special icon itself still matches your team color, however. The sub-weapon icon is simplified to a black vector on a yellow circle, distinguishing itself from the special meter. Grouping the sub-weapon and special together indicates that the controller inputs for them are done on the right side of the controller, where pressing the R button uses your sub-weapon, and clicking on the right stick activates your special. This wouldn't make sense if, let's say, the L button was pressed for either of these actions. When teammates super jump to you, an arrow icon with the teammate's name and approximate position now displays on screen. Regardless if you're using voice chat, this is a super helpful indicator for knowing your teammate's position, especially if they're going to get camped by enemies. The map is nearly identical to both new additions. You can now see the sub-weapon and specials of all players in the game, including you. This means you can plan around the strengths and weaknesses of an enemy's kit, such as shooting behind an enemy currently using an Ultra Stamp. The D-pad buttons for highlighting a teammate on the map are now black instead of matching your team's ink color. A cool touch is that some loading screens use claymation. I love claymation in games. I really hope Nintendo uses it more in their future titles, like an Earthbound remake. For ranked modes, there's now a yellow lead image next to the winning team. Nice visual indication reminding you which team currently has advantage. Matches that go into overtime now have an hourglass effect, with the winning team's color slowly moving down from top to bottom until overtime ends. A great indicator for which you can now plan those final few moments of the match before it says, game! Players who've disconnected now have fully blacked out icons, instead of displaying the weapon they used before they left the game. Anyone who disconnects within the first minute of the match automatically ends it, forcing everyone to start a new one.
I got disconnected again? Are you serious?
Connect me!
A bit frustrating but understandable, especially in ranked where any disconnect on your team can make or break the results of a match. Speaking of icons, player icons are now much larger and closer together than 2, making them easier to see. They also have a bit of texture and a glow effect behind them, making them pop. It's a subtle UI change, but it makes 3's UI look slightly different than 2's. It's similar to those flaming gradient icons in Smash Ultimate where from afar they just look like simple squares, but if you look closely, you actually see there's a bit of animation to them. Cool touch. Unfortunately, there's still only 2 callouts 3 games later. It goes to show how Nintendo is still 1 step forward, but 2 steps back with their multiplayer games. Look at Fortnite and how it has a whole wheel of selections for different callouts players can use. I understand Nintendo wanted to keep it simple, as this callout menu is a bit clunky to use, but it would be nice if we had at least 3 callouts and customized them in settings, except for Booyah though. It's too iconic to be removed. You can also now skip the news, letting you get into matches faster. Finally, I don't have to listen to the host just blabber on for a solid minute. I can just get straight into a match. Fantastic, and once again, reminds us that Nintendo wanted to make Splatoon 3 as competitive as possible. You can also rewatch the news too if you accidentally skipped it, which is nice. But the biggest UI overhaul across the entire series that happened in 3 is adding a playable lobby while waiting for matches. Yes, no more waiting in boring lobbying screens and playing squid jump or any of that. You can finally mess around in the training area, testing out the damage values for weapon specials, seeing ghosts of your teammates who are also in the lobby. You can also change the lobby music with the jukebox, featuring music from the previous games. I know not all players are going to take full advantage of this, but it's a groundbreaking addition that makes waiting for matches enjoyable and somewhat useful. While I miss some of the charm of the older games, Splatoon 3 pushing for a more competitive audience with its UI makes it easily the best in the series so far. Hopefully future entries continue this in the future, while pushing further into that early 2000s graffiti aesthetic Splatoon is best known for. And there you have it, the history of how Splatoon's UI design has changed throughout the series. Comment down below your favorite Splatoon game and any memories you have with the series. Special thanks to Melvania for being part of this video. If you want to see cool videos about indie games, Japan experiences, and even more about Splatoon, I highly recommend checking out her channel. Be sure to like and subscribe if you want to see me talk about UI and games more in the future. Anyways, I gotta boot up Xenoblade X on the Wii U before the online shuts down, so thanks for watching, bye!
Travel to the breakout, rounding out. I'm on a mission, routing out whatever it is I gotta do. Routing out until the day I meet you. I'm routing out. I look up in the skies, asking out a while, but never let it faze me. I'm keeping good vibes when I'm on the road. Watch out.